Please welcome Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer, AWS, Stephen Schmidt.
Hey everybody, good afternoon and welcome to the Security Leadership Session. I hope your week at reInvent's been awesome so far. We're calling this session Continuous Security Improvement. We definitely also considered, since we're in the security industry, something like don't panic, or yes, we still have work to do, but those scary headlines aren't the complete story. But still, given that, we want everyone out there to see that they are thriving in their security environment. The security program really brings results to their businesses and helps their customers out. So we went with continuous security improvement, and there's an aspirational subtitle up there. And that's about giving you actual strategies to do real security work that helps you and your customers deliver results. Some tactics you can take home, of course, are part of the way we think about things. Now, if you've ever been to one of my talks before, you know I love quotes from authors, sort of as a basis for the talk to give us a place to pivot and work. I also answer most questions that I'm asked with 42 because it's obnoxious, but it's also something that makes people think. So let's get started here with a focus on the power of a single click. This is from Douglas Adams, of course, and it resonates with me because the concept of a click unlocking everything gets at the sheer amount of goodness that we can believe that can be distilled down into singularly efficient actions on the part of the end user. Sure, behind the scenes, there's a lot of work that's going on. We're all doing a lot of incredibly difficult work every single day, so I won't claim victory on this front, but I will say that the process of making security is getting easier. The process of making security good is getting easier. If we want everyone to adopt better tactics, by the way, then we better offer our customers great ease of use on the services front. In other words, if we want continuous improvement, we need to lower the friction of security. This is really important. It's a guiding principle for us. It's a principle in my organization and I think everybody else should pay attention to as well. Whenever you can make security easier on the end user, and for many of us, the end user also means our engineers and developers who build the software that we vend to our customers, we need to do that. We all know that when a process is inefficient, overly taxing, people will just work around it. They don't want to put up with the nonsense that prevents them from doing their work. So instead, we've got to make security an easy choice. Don't make it more difficult on your humans to do the right thing, please. This leads me to how we're developing services and how we think the security services of the future start becoming bigger than the sum of the parts. Guard Duty, Detective, Security Hub, and of course the new version of Inspector, and more of them on them, by the way, in a little bit here. You are up and running without a whole bunch of prerequisites. You don't have data sources to enable or complex permissions to configure, and there's no software to deploy in each account or on each resource in order to take advantage of the services we're talking about. Now look, as I said, we know the work here isn't done yet. You will still probably want to look at integrating the output of our security services with your ticketing system or optimizing them for your particular environment. But getting started is as simple, and you start seeing value extremely quickly. To be able to get a threat detection and security posture monitoring or vulnerability management solution deployed across multiple accounts with just single clicks is pretty amazing, and it does speak to making security easier to use and easier on our people as a result. We've seen the vast majority of our enterprise customers adopting these services, by the way, so they're probably not new to most of the people in the room here. And we've got a lot of optimism about where we're headed with them in the future. Now then, as this is being live streamed and will also be posted online afterwards, I'll give you the broad overview of the three services I just mentioned. And I know that many of you already use these, so I won't belabor the point. But essentially, Amazon Guard Duty is a fully managed threat detection service that's able to proactively identify malicious activity or perhaps behavior that is sufficiently unusual that it should be looked at, even if it turns out that there was a completely reasonable explanation for the activity behind the scenes for something that caused the alarm. The point there is to get your attention on the right material with the right timing so that you can take action to protect yourself effectively. And where this becomes real world and tangible is with like data storage solutions. With a single click, Amazon S3 protection in GuardDuty continuously monitors and profiles your Amazon S3 data access events and your S3 configurations across your entire Amazon S3 estate. That's all of the accounts that you select to include in all the buckets. To drill down a little bit here, the kind of alerts that you'll see are things like requests coming from an unusual geographic location, or disabling of preventative controls that are important to the way your business operates, like Amazon S3 block public access, which if you're not using, you should be. Take a look. Or API calls consistent with attempts at data exfiltration by an adversary. So this is a really handy add-on for your security program. If you're not using it now, take a look. Let us know what you think. We're always interested in customer feedback on what benefits you and what you'd like to see improved. Next up, AWS Security Hub. Security Hub is a service that allows you to manage security and compliance findings in one location, reducing the amount of time you spend wrangling data from different locations, different data providers in your infrastructure, et cetera. In addition to the default insights that are provided by AWS and AWS partners, you can create your own insights to track issues that are unique to your particular environment. This level of customization, by the way, can come in really handy when you're dealing with unique security requirements or regulations that may be industry specific or in an area that you have particular internal controls that you need to enforce. Also, a relatively recent feature I hope folks have taken note of, Security Hub now allows you to designate an aggregation region and link some or all of your other regions to the aggregation region, which means that your Security Hub administrator or a delegated administrator account, as an example, can view and manage all of your findings in the aggregation region that you've specified. This gives you a centralized view of all of your findings across all your accounts and all of your regions. And also, individual Security Hub member accounts in the aggregation region can view and manage all of their findings across all of the linked regions as well. So it gives you an easier way to get access to all of your findings, take action to protect yourself as a result. This brings me to Amazon Detective, the third security service I mentioned on top. The value prop here is that Detective automatically collects log data from your AWS resources and then uses machine learning, statistical analysis, and graph theory to build a linked set of data that gets you way further down the path of efficient and speedy security investigations. Now, we're in Vegas, so if you placed a bet that around 10 minutes into the talk we get into graph theory, congrats, you won security bingo this time around. All jokes aside, our goal with Detective is to make it easier on everyone to analyze, investigate, and quickly identify the root cause of potential security issues. Tangibility. This is something that's been a consistent and constant refrain within my group and to aid our customers, and is really something that seems somewhat obvious if you put thought into it. But as I look around, I want to be driving our mission to be, how can we make customers safer in the cloud today? And as an aside, my real concern is every so often we see the perception of security becoming more important than the actuality of security. When I hear things like, well, if you work with our organization, you'll have access to the largest security team in the world. Or other things like, we've got unique threat intelligence signals. Or one I saw recently in news headlines went something like, we spend billions of dollars securing data centers. Okay, all those things seem positive and can certainly feel like a nice cozy blanket, but where does it get you as a customer? Is requiring a large security team here truly the end goal? I'd say actually it's the opposite. If you require more and more humans to do work successfully, you're failing. You'll never keep up with the bad guys. We have to focus on automation and mechanisms. Does announcing a security budget in a press release make any of us better off within this industry? In all seriousness, if I came out today and said, you know, we're spending X on security in 2022 and kind of waited for applause, would that be helpful to anyone? No. What I'm getting at here is I want everyone listening today to remain focused on the activities that you can do to make everyone more secure in the cloud today. That's where the good stuff is. Don't get me wrong. We've got incredibly sophisticated offerings along with hardware and software tools that we don't think are available anywhere else. But the technology must be firmly rooted in the concept of making customer security better. That's it. If you look around your own security landscape, where are the issues coming from? It's easy to identify sometimes where gains can be had. We need to make security easy, not bolted on, and we need to make security tools low friction for our developers and our customers to use, not unwieldy and costly. And in that same vein, as we're thinking about this absolutely massive element of humans involved in this equation, we need to train people on security best practices in a manner that's engaging. Which of course leads me nicely to our security awareness training as a way of engaging our employees in the topic of security choices. This is a tangible mechanism that we think is critical because we see a significant number of unforced errors around security, things like phishing and social engineering that still works, unfortunately. They lead to things like privileged escalation attacks, data exfiltration attempts, all sorts of bad outcomes. We wanted to release something here that helped agnostically across clouds because the world economy is a much better place when everybody is secure. This training, by the way, was built by our own Amazon Security Learning team, and it is exactly the same 15-minute long online training that we require all of our employees to take. It meets the same compliance requirements that many of you have, and it is built in a way that gives you easy access to the data there. By the way, the training features accessible content across a number of different languages. Anybody here can use it and can download it for use in the learning management system if you've got one, or you can complete it online at the URL that you see here on the screen, learnsecurity.amazon.com. The training, by the way, isn't branded. You won't see the words Amazon or AWS anywhere in it because we wanted this to be something that a lot of people would consume and use. It's available for free right now. It's something I'm truly proud of, the way our group operated. It's been accessed so far from 189 different countries around the world with really solid customer feedback reviews on it. Please take a look if you're in need of security training for your own personnel. We'll have more service guidance throughout this talk, but I did want to give a quick mention out there to Incident Manager from AWS Systems Manager. This may be a smaller launch that slipped by, but it is super valuable for security professionals out there. Again, this is about putting into place mechanisms that make security easier, where you're able to say, okay, we can legitimately improve this process with a relatively light lift. You can see a few of the features here, by the way. Response plans, runbooks, and plenty of integrations with other AWS services such as EventBridge, plus CloudWatch alarms, and events. Now remember, detection is one thing, but taking action once an alert happens is the next most important thing you can do. And that action, in many cases, should be automated. Incident Manager gives you the hooks that are necessary to take that action in a way that releases some of the burden from your own security teams. If you're executing a game day or an actual incident, these can all be kicked off using the AWS Management Console, the command line interface, or of course our SDKs as well. So to put a pin in this, your training and tools should be focused on building trust and making this process easier on your customers, whether it's internal or external customers. The risk we run as security professionals is like that old trope around the security person being unapproachable and coming from a place on high, as opposed to being someone that developers want to talk through. And it's so important to me that I want to give you a quick example from my own organization. That's our internal application security review process. Because before any of our services can be released to you to use in the outside world, we have to go through a rigorous set of checks, including penetration testing, et cetera. And as you can imagine, that process is very complex and it's intense. Because anytime we ship something, we want to make sure that that new capability is secure when it goes out in the world. But as high as the stakes are here, we actually consider this as a place where we can offer a concierge-style service to our internal developers, as opposed to being the traditional security enforcers of a gateway. We want the developers to partner with us, to collaborate with us, to make their service better. And that's something that's really important. Focusing on making the service better through application security reviews, as opposed to finding flaws in a service with application security reviews. It makes a difference to the people who build the service, the way you approach engaging with them there. Because I think we've all been in organizations where security becomes punitive, and what that creates is a culture of fear and avoidance. Is the security team going to come down on me if I tell them about this thing that I saw out there? Easy solution. I'm just not going to mention it as a result. Instead, let's make security a great experience for builders because they are innovating on behalf of our shared customers. We can never be in a position where somebody is doing something because security said so. That doesn't build trust, it doesn't build ownership, and it doesn't build a functional partnership. So we need to explain, we need to help, we need to cajole, we need to convince, we need to bring people along on the journey that we have. And if we do so, it'll make it far more likely that people will work with us the next time we have to engage with them, going forward through the life cycle of their services. Now then, we're going to get back to security culture in a bit, along with some service and roadmap announcements that I think you'll be interested in. But first, I'd like to bring Sarah Cicchetti to this stage. This quote credentials her quite well. She's a principal product manager with our AWS Identity team, and she's here to give you some insights into the tactics and strategies you should be considering within your identity program. Sarah, take it away.
Hello, I am your special envoy from AWS Identity. Thanks for letting me elbow my way into your talk, Steve. We've been talking about security a lot today, and security is critical to what we do at AWS Identity. We think about it from product design all the way through to launch. And as a product manager, I can tell you that you don't get out of the gate on launch day unless you've consistently thought about security all the way through. It's a deep part of our culture. And we do a lot of things at AWS Identity. What do? Well, we authenticate things, obviously. We authenticate and authorize over 500 million API calls every second. But we do a lot more than that. We do multi-account governance and structuring, as well as what I like to call identity glue that helps you bring identities from anywhere and use them everywhere within AWS. We have a platform called Amazon Cognito that is rock solid. It lets you build AWS-grade authentication into your own application. We just released a new console experience for Amazon Cognito, so if you haven't taken a look at it in a while, take another look. We also have resource management tools and access management tools. So we're busy people. And there's one thing you can do to help us help you be secure. If you take nothing else away from this conference, I'd like you to take this. Multi-factor authentication is the best way for you to secure your work as you build. We use multi-factor authentication every day as employees of Amazon. I keep mine on my earrings. These are YubiKey Nano 5s. And I think that this message is so important to get out that I had personalized plates put on my car. That's not Photoshop. I tried to let them let me drive it on stage, and they said no. MFA is important for everyone, everywhere. It helps you maintain security as you build. And we know that there are more MFA features you'd like to see from AWS in this space. We are working on those as fast as we can. I assure you they are on the roadmap. We're keeping a high security bar as we build, so it's taking some time, but those are coming. So that's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is to use organizations and SSO. All production workloads on AWS should be multi-account workloads, full stop. That's how we have designed our security and identity tooling. AWS Organizations is the service that helps you structure and govern your multi-account workloads. It's what powers AWS Control Tower. So if you're using Control Tower, you're already using AWS Organizations. AWS SSO is the glue that I talked about earlier, so that you can bring your AD identities, your Okta identities, wherever you hold your identities, you can bring them into AWS and use them everywhere. SSO is how humans should interface with AWS. If you are a human, you should be logging into AWS using AWS SSO. So those are my first three pieces of advice. Use MFA, use organizations, log in with SSO. So let's talk about some of the newer concepts that we're thinking about in AWS Identity. One of those is data perimeters. As we think about how people interact with data, we found that the tools that we've built so far aren't connected enough. Identity tools and resource management tools and networking tools have traditionally been distinct. And this is where we came up with the concept of data perimeters. Data perimeters are preventative guardrails that enable you to restrict access to data to known identities from trusted network locations. Data perimeters are how we think about in AWS protecting your data from all angles. And what we want you to be able to accomplish today is something like, these are my corporate assets. I don't want anyone from outside to be able to get inside. But we're also thinking about the future. So as a product management team, we have to keep our brains years in the future. So when we release something and people say, oh man, I really love that, we say, well, thank you, but that vision was born years ago. So the visions that we're thinking about today in terms of data perimeters are more granular. When we talk to customers, they don't talk about identity tools and resourcing tools and networking tools separately. What they say is, I want to make sure that my developers don't have access to my customer data. I want to make sure that my billing data is only accessible to my finance team. So those are the kinds of things. You can do that today with like resource tags and IAM policies, but we want to make it super easy to configure these things and have them be robust even as AWS releases new services. So that's what you'll see us building in the future. Now I want to go over some of the recent releases that we've had. And top of my list for recent releases in the last few years is IAM Access Analyzer. Access Analyzer uses automated reasoning and mathematical proofs to analyze your IAM policies and help you understand findings that are relevant to you where you may be allowing cross-account access or public access unintentionally. This week, we released a new kind of access analyzer. It's not an IAM access analyzer, it's a network access analyzer. The way that network access analyzer works is that you create a network access scope. So you might want to say something like, I want to make sure that the AWS resources that my development team uses are separate, distinct, and unreachable from the AWS resources that my finance team uses. And you can run Network Access Analyzer, and it will produce findings for you of anything that violates the scope that you outlined. So when we think about access analysis, we want you to do both. You should be thinking about network access and permissions access as you build to create a cohesive security story. Another release that's really exciting for us is policy validation. Access Analyzer policy validation uses over 100 policy checks to help you understand how your policies could be better in terms of simplicity, security, and grammar. Policy validation, if you've ever heard of Becky Weiss talk about AWS policies, she says it's like your pedantic uncle who, when you come see him at Thanksgiving and you say, hey, can I take your coat? Says, I don't know, can you? That's an IAM policy. And so the intent of policy validation is to make sure that when you run your policies, when they activate at runtime, that they're actually doing what you intend, so that you know how they're going to work ahead of time. And lastly, one of the releases that we've had recently that I'm really excited about is policy generation. When we first released Access Analyzer, one of the loud pieces of feedback that we got was, OK, you can tell me what I've accessed. You can tell me how to make my policies better. Why can't you just write the policies for me? So we do. You can use Access Analyzer Policy Generator, and it works like a 3D scanner and a 3D printer. So it will look at what you're doing in AWS, and it will say, Sarah went here, and Sarah went there, and Sarah went there. And then it will print out a policy just for you that helps you respect least privilege. So you can Marie Kondo your AWS account and make everything neat and tidy. So that's all the time I have for you. This stuff sparks a lot of joy in me. Hopefully it sparks a lot of joy in you. If you want to learn more, please follow us on Twitter. We're at AWS Identity. Thanks so much, and I'll turn it over to Steve to talk about security updates.
Thanks, Sarah. One thing Sarah didn't mention about her team is how deeply they're engaged on the topic of identity and access management. You saw the license plate, but that's really the tip of the iceberg of that group in terms of the dedication that they bring to the equation. And hopefully you've been able to catch a few of the great identity speakers and feature releases today, like Sarah was talking about VPC Network Access Analyzer here over the past few days. And switching gears a bit, we're going to get into that portion of the talk that I love every year. This is the big updates on our security services. I know there are hundreds of things to sift through for each reInvent, and it can definitely be a little overwhelming in terms of volume. So I always like to bring a few of the items to the forefront for an audience of this size, both here in Las Vegas and for those folks who are online. First thing I want to mention is our momentum with Security Hub. We've added 72 new best practice checks, which brings us up to 162 checks this year. We're at 64 partner integrations, so there's a very high likelihood that whatever the security software ISV partner is that you're using, they integrate with Security Hub right now. Plus, Security Hub now supports Amazon Virtual Private Cloud endpoints via AWS Private Link, so that you can securely initiate API calls to Security Hub from within your VPC. You can try that out today through the VPC console, our APIs, or SDKs, of course. Create a VPC endpoint for Security Hub in your VPC. Next up, Amazon Detective now supports S3 and DNS findings from guard duty. This can be a helpful feature when you need to investigate who an S3 bucket creator was, or the creation date, or even critical forensic information or investigation queries like who made this S3 bucket public, or did the user execute sensitive APIs to disable logging. This also allows for deep dives on findings about individual incidents or components of an incident related to things like low reputation domain names. We want security analysts to be able to quickly identify the root cause of all guard duty findings using Detective. One from earlier this week that Peter mentioned, AWS Shield Advanced with automatic application layer DDoS mitigation. This, I think, is a really big one. This one gets back to ease of use for us. Remember how I talk about reducing friction in the security process? Automatic means pretty much reduced, period. If you think about here, there is no manual intervention needed. The WAF rules are automatically created to mitigate the detected DDoS events. Those rules are tested against normal traffic to minimize false positives. And finally, any automatic rules are also automatically removed after an event subsides. It's a really nice feature set that's been added to AWS Shield. If you're a Shield user, check it out now. Now then, one that's near and dear to me, it's about Amazon Inspector. This service has been available since 2015, yes, but we've re-architected it so you can now deploy it with just a few clicks. Plus, Inspector now allows you to continuously scan both your EC2 workloads, but also container workloads for software vulnerabilities. In terms of the why here, we launched enhanced scanning with Inspector to solve for the three needs that we heard from customers. First, customers want to scan programming language packages like Python and Java. Second, customers want to be able to run continuous vulnerability scans on their images rather than waiting for some arbitrary time period in order to look at whether they're vulnerable to something or not. And finally, customers wanted integrated scan findings that work directly with Security Hub and organizations. We're seeing more asks now from customers who are concerned with the software they use in their containers, especially when it's coming from third-party publishers. This concept of container security will come up again near the end of my presentation today, and I think you'll be pleased to see our overall direction here. If you want to learn more, by the way, of any of the new features for Inspector, there will be a session that goes into much more detail right after my talk here at the Venetian in Murano 3306. That's starting at 2:30 p.m. Now I've got your attention with the fun part, which is some announcements. I'm going to take the opportunity here to have you do something that's a low lift, but potentially highly impactful. That's please update the alternate security contacts in your accounts. This is security vegetables. Previously, you could only do this via the console, but now there are a number of ways to get there. The AWS command line interface, the AWS SDKs are two of them. You can also go through AWS organizations to manage alternate contacts on member accounts. And by verifying that you've got the right contacts listed, you're ensuring the right individuals receive important AWS notifications in the event of a security concern. Remember, we're constantly watching out for our customers, and when we see something that's unusual or represents clearly problematic behavior, we're going to want to reach out to you, and we need to be able to get a hold of you appropriately. So please make sure that contact information is up to date. We've revamped our internal processes so that we copy the security contact when we're doing any security-related email account outreach. That used to go just to the email account that's associated with the root account. But even if you have hundreds of accounts, previously the emails would have gone out to the various different email addresses that were associated with every account. Now the central security team can also get notified if you add your email address as the security contact to any of your accounts. As your business scales, this becomes really, really important. By the way, you can expect to see support for additional account settings like this in the future release of AWS Organizations. Okay, so the next one is a bit of a bigger meal overall, but this is thinking about security services holistically and where they belong in a defense in-depth program. It's centered around the idea that you don't want to secure just one thing or one edge, or use one technique or one approach. By using separate, often overlapping tools and techniques and different procedures, we build far more robust protection that's resilient to individual faults. One of the things that we look for in the internal design of our services is we never want one security control to be the definitive barrier between adversaries and our services. There must be multiples here, and I encourage you to think the same way. The security pillar document referenced here is 45 pages long, and it walks you through the 7 core security design principles that we think are really important. And this material could easily fill an entire presentation by itself, so I'm not going to get too far in the weeds. But if you do get a chance to check it out, you'll see that it details many of the topics you're already likely looking into as a security builder: identity and access management, detection, infrastructure protection, data protection, incident response. They're all in there, along with actionable guidance throughout. And I think that's the most important part. It's not just telling you need to do something, but telling you what to do to protect yourself effectively. Whether you're building out a net new security program or just looking to achieve some quick wins in an already mature program, I think that you will find some value in there. Please take a look. Now, on the topic of building out a security program, I want to bring Tom Avant to the stage next to give a bit more insight into how we build our own security programs at AWS, as well as some of the high-level mechanisms that we use in a space like data center security. Come on out, Tom.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Avant, and as you can see, they've given me my own Douglas Adams quote. This one resonates with me because my group is very much in the business of inventing and simplifying in the face of complex problems. First off, to provide some really good context in terms of what my team does, we're responsible for 24/7 security response, access control, engineering, and business continuity for AWS and AWS data centers. As you can imagine, we deal with a really diverse set of security issues. An example might be an attempted intrusion, which is a really big deal. But my team also may be responding to an internal S3 bucket that a well-intentioned developer may have accidentally opened up. Much smaller, but still an element of risk. No matter what the issue may be, the key to success for my team is not found in the technology we use. The key to success is found in the methodologies that we apply in diving in to solve problems. The cornerstone of our organization is the security culture that we represent from top to bottom. That includes all AWS personnel, even those outside of AWS security. It's not particularly profound what I just shared, and it's definitely not the most technical thing that's been shared on the stage today, but it is one of our absolutely most powerful tools. Culturally, from security awareness training to email protocols, our employees are regularly reminded of the importance of security in their work. In the physical space, this means policies such as no tailgating, one badge, one swipe, PIN verification and security, credential verification, It all must become second nature to both our employee and our vendor population groups. Additionally, we have regular See Something, Say Something campaigns, and we hand out awards for calling attention to any security issues. We're always looking for ways to empower our employee base to serve as an extension of the security team. Because as Steve regularly says, we can't hope to scale our work with everyone else that's not on the security team not also being hypervigilant. Regular security reviews are also the heart of our culture. We want to raise and foster an environment where everyone feels able to raise an issue anywhere in the reporting chain at any time. And if you don't get an answer in a timely manner, we want to make sure that our people are going up to leadership, they're paging the next point of contact as far as it has to go. Steve himself gets paged if it comes to that. It's not fun. I've seen it happen often in meetings. But that's okay, because that's the culture that we want to have. Now, in a true emergency, there are a number of levers that we can all pull on, depending on the scenario. Internally, we've got our HR, we've got legal, we've got other security partners, and we've got our leadership team. Of course, something small isn't going to require much of those resources. That's not a day-to-day occurrence. But when something does rise to the big level, to the top of needing external support, there's a very real chance that we'll be triaging with local law enforcement, even potentially federal agencies, given the threat itself. We've got all the runbooks you expect from AWS security. But we're also heavily reliant on high judgment humans in order to make us get to the right answer. You want to instill in your employees that they should be active participants, that there shouldn't be a punitive aspect to anyone raising an alarm. Conversely, get your staff comfortable with the idea that they don't really want access to everything out there, right? Even Andy Jassy has the request access to permissions when visiting our data centers. The security choices we made are meant to provide structures that are in place to protect our people, which is ultimately something that they can rely on and trust. Okay, so a few organizing principles here to give you a small glimpse behind the curtain of how we're structured. For us, tactically, access control increases and becomes more stringent as we get closer and closer to customer data and IP. Our outer boundaries start at the perimeter of our data centers, and the goal is very straightforward: deter, detect, deny intrusion. The goal there, in that order, then as we continue to enter into the perimeter, is to continue to raise the security. We've got a combination of workflow management systems, access control systems, and we apply the principle of least privilege to ensure that only the right people enter the right places at the right time for the right reasons. As we expand our service offerings, we're really starting to look at cool new things like Project Kuiper, which some of you already heard about. The Amazon low Earth satellite that's meant to provide fast and affordable access to internet in places that has never been prevalent before. The concept of instituting a protective model that stretches into non-traditional environments such as low Earth orbit is definitely not something that I would have predicted before I came to AWS. But it's definitely an interesting organizational challenge. To wrap things up, a security culture that is grounded in a core set of tenets that demystifies and is accessible in nature and is inclusive to all and driven by builders is what gets me excited and brings me back to work every day. Steve, I'll throw it back to you. Thanks everyone for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your week here at re:Invent.
Yes. Thanks, Tom. I think Tom and previously Sarah's comments as well, you've gotten a really good view on how we think about security across the company here and how we think about securing things internally. We hope that you've picked up a thing or two to bring back to your own cloud implementation when you pack up to go home in a day or so. Now, as we enter the home stretch here, It's not hugely controversial to say that what you really want as a customer is just stuff that works, right? Things you don't have to work hard to use, to configure, to take advantage of. Which is why we're going to wrap up this presentation with a look at a few of the areas that we think are differentiators for us at AWS, the places where we think our security choices allow us to offer you real advantages, as well as a preview of a feature that we have planned for you in Q1 of 2022. That's right, for the first time ever, they're actually letting me pre-announce something. I can't even tell you how many favors I had to call in order to make that happen. If there's one thing that service teams do not enjoy, it's when we've previously announced something that's coming soon. So they have a deadline that they're really, really pressed to meet now. So I definitely owe them some Golden Knights tickets or something for the next time we come out for reInvent in 2022. Now, you'll note the topic we've got on screen here, containers. Containers and code. Why is this a focus for us in security? Well, in the spirit of providing tactical and strategic value to you during this presentation, we've gone through security services, we've gone through security culture, we've gone through identity and access management, and a few of the more buzzy releases at reInvent this year. But this is really the foundation of your production environment, your code, along with the technology in containers that many customers across verticals are leveraging as a way of, pardon the pun, containing risk through isolation. One of the things that we caution customers to look out for is an inadvertent commit of plain text secrets into code repositories. This happens because someone takes a shortcut. They hard code static secrets during local development and then forget about it. Weeks later, that's committed, it's in production, no one notices, and those secrets are out there waiting like a time-stamped date with doom. This is where a tool like Code Guru is incredibly helpful, because you can automate code reviews by scanning your Java and Python applications. Additionally, Code Guru Reviewer will suggest improvements regarding security vulnerabilities and deviations from AWS best practices. Which brings me to the new Amazon Code Reviewer Secrets Detector, which was released on Monday. It's an automated tool to help detect secrets in source code or configuration files, like passwords, API keys, SSH keys, and access tokens. In addition to Java and Python code, Secrets Detector also scans configuration files and documentation files. Why? Because we found that customers sometimes put things in notes like, I should remove this later, but here's the API key I'm using. So we need to go through those things and look to make sure that nobody left any cruft behind. By the way, my favorite code comment ever was in a section of a networking protocol that I was reviewing because of a problem that occurred in it. And the section started with a header that says, don't remove this, I don't know what it does, but it breaks. I'm like, yes, that makes me confident we know what we're doing here. So Code Guru Reviewer then suggests some remediation things that you can do to secure your secrets using Secrets Manager. That's really important. It's okay, you've got a problem, and here's what to do to take that problem and get rid of it. This new functionality is included as part of Code Guru Reviewer service. It's at no additional cost. It supports 17 API providers right out of the gate. That's companies like Datadog and Salesforce, Slack, Stripe, Tableau, Twilio, just to name a few of them. The full list of supported APIs is online at our AWS News blog if you need to dive a little bit deeper. Now then, as we move on to containers, I think we've all seen headlines recently that indicate that there might be a need for some new security tooling relevant to this particular space, because as the adoption of containers skyrockets, so does the need for easy to manage and scale container security. We've heard that message, so we're now developing feature sets that address container environments, starting with guard duty for Amazon EKS audit logs in Q1 of 2022. Sorry to the guard duty team, no pressure here, you gotta deliver on time because I just told everybody when it's gonna launch. This will provide customers intelligent threat detection for their container workloads, scanning for unusual resource deployments, things like malicious configuration changes, or escalation of privilege attempts. We never want to overpromise, so the guard duty capabilities are the only ones that we're pre-announcing here today because we've got really high confidence that they're going to deliver in the time frame that we expect. Speaking of overpromising, I want to encourage everyone out there to make sure containers are not your complete security story. We've seen too many examples of containers that are not also wrapped in an instance lead to privilege escalation. So as you're building out your container program, do a bit of diligence as to how the provider of your container services, whether it's on premises or in the cloud, thinks about the concept of true isolation. Now that we've considered containers and code, I think there's a hardware security story to tell as well. You've likely heard the term confidential computing a fair amount lately. It's a wonderful marketing term. This term has definitely lost its meaning and come off just as another catchy slogan when it's applied too broadly. But there are interesting portions of that that may unlock some security value for you. For us, the interesting concepts include the execution of hardware-based isolation involving data, functions, or applications from the operating system or the hypervisor. This is something we've thought about for years, and we've made steady strides in this front when we introduced AWS Nitro. Long story very short, Nitro executes upon the concept of vertical isolation that customers want, which is to say the protection of data and workloads from the cloud provider itself. Nitro systems run an isolated network. There's no operational access to AWS Nitro systems, and that means no SSH, no general purpose access of any kind. Every Nitro build is signed, and every operation is pre-vetted. Nitro provides confidential computing based on hard isolation, not software which may be at risk. And then last year, we made Nitro Enclaves generally available. Enclaves was built to provide a new form of horizontal isolation, allowing customers to break down their own workloads into more trusted and less trusted components, and then have the ability to isolate the more sensitive components from even their own administrators. Remember earlier, we kept our folks out of the mix by making it impossible for our team to see your stuff. This is a situation where you can even exclude your own team from seeing your really important confidential information, which means customers now have the ability to achieve hardware isolation in whichever direction they like, be it from the cloud provider alone or within a cloud environment that's their own. Now, of course, we have to have the NASCAR slides on there because it just shows the breadth of what we do. And finally, now that we're through services, culture, code, containers, and hardware, I'd be remiss if I didn't give some attention to our AWS Security Competency Partners. Our community of security technology and consulting partners has been selected because of the deep expertise that they bring to the table, securing every stage of cloud adoption. From initial migration to day-to-day management. You can see we've aligned them by category here, and as I click through, you'll see the final 3 segments because it's truly so broad, I can't fit it on one slide and still have you be able to read anything that's up there. But if there's a particular area where you need a partner to up-level your security, this is a great place to start. As you can see here, security engineering and governance, risk and compliance are the 2 largest segments where we've got a number of providers for you to choose from, and you'll have a great range of expertise to draw on no matter where you're at within your own security program. Finally, our managed security service providers segment. We're proud to note that our level 1 MSSP competency partners represent an industry-first baseline standard of quality for managed cloud security. Through the AWS MSSP competency program and the AWS Marketplace, we've built a prescriptive and effective way for customers to easily find AWS-vetted MSSPs. These are people that we know the bar that they're reaching. This approach allows customers to find solutions more efficiently while leveraging their AWS Enterprise Agreement and discounts as well. One last announcement. Please save the date for our Security, Compliance, and Privacy Learning Conference that we affectionately named AWS Reinforce. We'll be hosting the second in-person version of this on June 28th and 29th next year in Houston, Texas. Yes, I know, Houston in June, but it's when it's available. We'll have a blog announcing how to reserve your spot in early 2022. We completely sold out the conference in an amazingly short period of time when we ran it in 2019. Since we're able to pull this off in person, I'm really excited that we're going to have a great time in Houston in June as well. I want to thank you for coming out here today. It's always a real highlight of my year because I get to meet and to talk with customers who are excited about security and want to learn more about where we're headed in the cloud security space. I've got this last Douglas Adams quote out here to point out that who you choose as your cloud provider, as well as the tools and systems you utilize, often come down to who you trust the most to do the right thing. I think my team gets up every single day looking to earn that trust. And I hope that's being reflected in the way we build, train, and communicate with you, our customers, and even within our own teams. I firmly believe that the erosion of trust in any organization is usually the beginning of the end for that organization. Yes, we still have a lot more to do in security, but I'm pleased that we're on that road together. Thank you again, everyone. Don't forget to fill out your session survey. Please check out Inspector Session, which is happening shortly in Murano 3306, starting at 2:30 p.m. Have a great day.